The free agency is a time during the NFL offseason where players who have been cut or had expired contracts meet with new teams for a new opportunity, while the teams themselves, who may be a piece away, will go all in some instances, grabbing some of the best available guys to make a run for the Super Bowl. That gamble is never bigger than signing a quarterback to a huge deal. This can result in the greatest player to ever play for your franchise like Drew Brees, or it could set your team back years with a miss, like it's happening right now with Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns. Funny enough, due to this massive blunder caused by Cleveland, people often forget about this terrible signing, even though it was relatively recent. That was almost a decade ago. Okay, so even though this free agent signing was now almost 10 years ago, somehow, some way, where the hell did the time go? I still think it's one of the worst contracts in NFL history when you consider how much was paid and how much you got out of it. The player associated with this dilemma is now the rarely mentioned Brock Osweiler. When you think back, you probably don't realize the guy who everyone was talking about in the late 2010s only started a total of 30 games in his career. But what actually happened? Why did Osweiler fail in Houston? And just like the title says, how bad was he actually? To get a better understanding on how things shook out in the end, let's take it back to the 2012 draft. In 2012, there was no shortage of talent for quarterbacks, with the first two picks being Andrew Luck and RG3. Per WalterFootball.com, the talent was there. The cannon arm, the fast release, the superb field of vision, because of course you'll get that at 6'8". But his biggest weakness was just the fact that he didn't play a whole lot with Arizona State. He only became the full-time starter in just his junior year. But given that he had everything that you'd look for in terms of a physique or physical traits, teams were more than willing to take a shot. On surface, it seemed as if he went to the perfect system. Brock was going to be built as the future, while the Broncos went all in for a few seasons with the newly acquired Peyton Manning. With Manning on the team, Osweiler didn't see much action in his first 3 seasons. However, things would change in 2015. The Broncos as a team were dominant, even going 7-0 in the beginning of the season. But this was in spite of Manning's play on the field taking a serious nosedive. The 39-year-old would even get benched in a game against the Chiefs after just completing 5 of 20 passes with 4 total interceptions. Which, on a side note, is such a horrible game for one of the legends of the league. Yet, this was also the game that Peyton Manning broke the career passing yard record. So it's just funny how that played out. Anyway, this now became Brock's opportunity to shine, and he was decent. Nothing that really said, wow, they had this guy waiting in the wings? Well, okay, to be fair though, he was still head and shoulders better than what Manning was producing, but when you looked at the totality of his game, he proved that he could be maybe a solid starter, or maybe even an elite backup, but nothing that really said franchise quarterback. Osweiler's season would come to an end in week 17 when he would get benched in favor of the future Hall of Famer. And Manning would lead the Broncos, or should I say he was dragged through the playoffs by his team, and the Broncos would win Super Bowl 50, with Manning carrying the squad with his 0 touchdowns, 141 yards, and 1 interception to victory. Osweiler would finish the season playing in 9 games, starting in 8 where he would toss 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, just under 2,000 yards, and more importantly, held a 5-3 record. The guy was a winner, sort of. With Brock's performance, you'd think that he would want to stay in Denver, as this was the final season of Manning's career, so the Broncos were needing to look in a different direction, and they could have turned to Osweiler, but the 2012 quarterback just felt like he was worth a bit more than what Denver was offering. So as a result, Osweiler would hit free agency. I just want to emphasize that it must be a QB or desperately QB needy team that would want to take a chance on Osweiler. Just like in college, in the NFL, he doesn't have that much film on him. In the 4 seasons that he was in the Mile High City, he started in a total of 8 games. And it's not like he even had one of those Matt Flynn kind of games where just out of nowhere he's going to toss 6 touchdowns or anything even close to that. But maybe I'm just not being fair to Brock, as there was a team that came knocking, that being the Houston Texans, who would offer the 6'13" giant a 4-year $72 million deal, with $37 million of it being guaranteed. The guy who has started just a single season in college and half a season in the NFL across 7 years had now become one of the 20 highest paid players in the NFL at that point. But at the time, the Texans were on the rise, and that was despite the poor quarterback play. If you watched my DeAndre Hopkins video, you know that prior to Osweiler's arrival in Houston, there was a quarterback carousel over the years, with guys like Ryan Mallett, Brandon Weeden, and Brian Hoyer, just to name a few. If Osweiler turned out to be a hit, then Houston could have actually made a deep run in the playoffs. The 2016 season actually started off pretty decent, throwing for 231 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception in his debut against the Bears, which did result in a 23-14 win. Okay, good start. In week 2, against the Chiefs, he would throw for 268 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. I'm not sure if I'd call that better, but In week 3, Osweiler and the Texans would suffer a 27-0 loss to the Patriots, where the quarterback would throw an interception and pass for under 200 yards. Week 5 against the Vikings was a 31-13 beatdown, where he completed just 9 of 42 passes and 184 yards and a touchdown and interception apiece? Man, maybe it gets better? Or maybe not. Or maybe not. Deep into the season, the Texans, who were fighting for a playoff spot, would bench Osweiler in the middle of a game against the Jaguars in Week 15, after throwing back-to-back interceptions early in the second. And Houston would turn to Tom Savage. But believe it or not, the Texans would climb out of a 13-0 deficit with Savage and would win 21-20. The team would make the switch official, and Osweiler, the $72 million man, was now the team's backup. He would miss the following game against the Bengals and would only make his return to the lineup due to an injury to Savage in a crucial Week 17, and looked alright. The team would lose, yes, but were 9-7 and made the playoffs. Osweiler would remain the starter going into the wildcard game against Oakland and would win 27-14. Now don't get too excited, Osweiler fans. He went up against Connor Cook. Connor Cook, who threw 3 interceptions in this game. In the divisional, Brock would hit a new low. In prime time against the Brady-led Patriots, he would throw 3 costly interceptions and would fail to reach 200 pass yards and had a single touchdown. The defense did their best, causing 2 interceptions of their own against Tom, but it wasn't enough as the Texans would fall by a 34-16 margin. Even though Osweiler made the playoffs, similar to his mentor, he was essentially dragged by the rest of the team. His final stats for the season included 2,957 pass yards, 15 touchdowns to a franchise record 16 interceptions, a 59% completion rate, which was 27th in the league, a 49.3 QBR, which was good for 22nd, and a 72.2 passer rating, which was only better than Ryan Fitzpatrick. But an 8-6 record, so I mean, there must be some decent play. Oh, that's why they went 9-7. In just one season, the Brock Osweiler experiment had already failed. They didn't even bother wanting to run it back in 2017, sending him to Cleveland in a trade where Houston would send a 6th and a 2nd round pick for the Browns just to essentially absorb Osweiler's contract. Now you might be asking yourself, well, if Houston already committed so much damn money to the man, why not just try again? 1. Houston, like I mentioned before, had the #1 ranked defense, so clearly they are in a window to win a ring now. If the offense can just hold their own, then they definitely had a shot. 2. Reports surfaced that Osweiler and Bill O'Brien would clash on how the offense should run, and you know you do not cross Bill O'Brien. Just ask DeAndre Hopkins a few years later. And 3, and most importantly, the offense the previous year was somehow better with the bottom of the barrel quarterbacks than they had with Osweiler and his massive deal. The offense ranked 29th in both pass and total yards, a steep drop from the middle of the pack rankings the year prior. So when you combine everything together, you can understand why Houston just wanted to cut their losses. While he did go to Cleveland and competed for the starting position, the guy still somehow lost out to Deshaun Kaiser. This is the year the Browns went 0-16, and the man still couldn't earn the starting job. From there, Brock would be nothing more than a career backup in the league. He would be cut by Cleveland and would return to Denver after an injury to Paxton Lynch, and even got an opportunity to start when Trevor Siemian would go down with an injury. So, you know what? Maybe there's some retribution. The reunitement can maybe ignite something deep within Brock Osweiler. He went 0-4. You know what? Forget about what I said as far as elite backup was concerned. In 2018, Brock would sign with Miami and would start on another handful of games when Ryan Tannehill went down with injury. Brock would ultimately play in 7 games, including 5 starts, and would throw 6 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, 1,247 pass yards, and had a 2-3 record. In 2019, Osweiler would walk away from the game due to no offers coming that would include him getting an opportunity to be the starter. And he also had a satisfaction with his career and earnings during his time in the league. In 2022, he would become a college football analyst for ESPN and would serve as an ambassador for ShareX, which is a company that helps patients access maintenance and specialty medications that they would otherwise not be able to afford. Osweiler's career had a chance to be something special, but could not take advantages of his opportunities. While he had those intangibles that any team looks for, the size, arm strength, he just could not make quick decisions and made way too many inaccurate throws. All in all, he still made it to the NFL, contributed to a Super Bowl run, and at the end of the day, he can say that he made millions. His final career stats include a 15-15 record, 7,418 pass yards, which is good for 248th all time, 37 touchdowns to 31 interceptions, a Super Bowl ring, and earned over $41 million. Now that we've covered his career, it's time to do what we always do on this channel. If I had to give the career of Brock Osweiler's time in the NFL a grade, all things considered, draft stock and all that, I have to give him a D+. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. If this is your first time on the channel, consider subscribing. We're on the road to 5,000 subs. But that's going to do it, ladies and gentlemen. It's been Shaboy, and until next time. Shaboy!